Hello Mudbeards, fellow Foundation fans, and book readers who are excited to get a Mycogen name drop. And today we're going to go ahead and break down Season 3, Episode 3 of Foundation. We'll go ahead and jump right into it, and finally getting the clarification of which number Cleons we're dealing with this season. Despite being clones, each iteration does have their own number. It seems this season we're dealing with Dusk, who is Cleon the 23rd, Brother Dude, who is Cleon the 24th, and Brother Dawn, who is Cleon the 25th. Either way, the episode starts explaining to us how Brother Dawn actually met up with Gale. Turns out, at some point, he was looking into Harry Seldon's work. It's during this moment he references Harry Seldon as Raven Seldon. The Raven was a name Harry Seldon was referred to as during his time on Trantor at Streeling University, and his followers, some very intelligent individuals, referred to him as such. Either way, we get a return to Streeling University, and it turns out that despite seemingly everything burning during the Starbridge attack, some of Harry Seldon's work did survive. Not only that, but we find that Callie's 9th proof of folding has found its way back to Streeling University thanks to Gale, who eventually found her way back to it, now utilizing it as a way to find other people who enjoy the study of Harry Seldon or math altogether like herself. But she never imagined she'd catch an emperor. Either way, Callie's 9th proof of folding was banned by Cleon the 12th. This was the same Cleon that blew up half of Anacreon and Thespis. Part of me wonders, considering how instrumental Callie's work was in creating the Prime Radiant, and how there seems to be some mystery behind what people actually see when they actually fold space and jump across it, and why they have to be sedated. Either way, it's during Dawn's meeting with Gale that he does discuss the face scramblers and explain why he's wearing such an awful looking fake mustache. See, the Dawn from Season 2, or Cleon the 18th, had utilized face scramblers to escape Trantor. So since then, they've been tracking them down. Another interesting thing to know is when they do cut back to modern day time in Season 3, Dawn does get his message from Gale, and I swear I've seen that same messaging system either in Season 1 or maybe in the Dune series. Either way, if anybody knows, let me know in the comments. We then cut back to Calgon, where Pritchard enacts his plan that he formulated with the Mallows last week so he can get inside the club party and get in contact or a confrontation with the Mule. This whole sequence was actually a pretty fun one. I enjoyed the cool effects that Magnifico had playing his cool Battleidier or whatever it's called. And it was very sweet of Beta to be kind to Magnifico, even if it was part of a ploy. Either way, her calling him Maggie as they make their escape off the planet was pretty fitting, not considering it didn't happen in the book, but for her character from the book. And if their escape seemed a little easy, I wonder if that was partially intentional, but I'll touch on that by the end of the video. I do find it interesting that later we see the Mule gets a little bit hectic and antsy whenever he's separated from his clown, finding his music soothing. Either way, I really enjoyed his scene with Torrin Mallow, and I know some people are referring to this performance similar to Euron Greyjoy's from Game of Thrones, but I do think it's slightly similar to how that character should be acting, and I also think it's a little bit different than Show's Euron simply because he's just a little bit more calm. But I definitely see the resemblance, and I'm not blind to it. We'll have to keep going with the season, but either way, I think he's utilizing his intensity a little more specifically in this series rather than Game of Thrones, where it was just kind of the entire time. But let's cut back to Han Pritchard. Before most of this sequence went down, Han Pritchard was the first to try to confront the Mule. And it immediately goes south when the Mule taps into his mind and seems to pay reference to the fact that Han Pritchard himself could be a Mentalic. And considering his wealth of knowledge and potential connections, I think that this could confirm he's a spy for the Second Foundation, which I believe would be a deviation from the source material as far as I'm remembering, especially the Mentalic part. But I could have also misread this scene. Either way, when he does reference the Mule, Han Pritchard dips out of there. Judging by the trailer shots we've gotten so far, I'm assuming this is so he can meet up with Gale and potentially inform her on what happened, and in the same episode we're likely to get an explanation for how he and Gale actually know each other, similar to Dawn's opening in this episode. Let's go ahead and cut to the Imperial storyline though, and we finally get a reference to Mycogen. In the series, it's presented as a sector within the stars and a group of people who strongly believe in the resurgence of robots. And this is a huge connection to the prequel books of the series, but I'll get into that by the end of the video. Either way, it looks like that belief that Song has is actually punishable by death, and Demerzel goes ahead and gets rid of her, despite the fact that normally in any other case, she would absolutely kill her. But in this situation, for Brother Dude's sake, she let her live. But I do wonder if there's more to her and Song's interaction. Either way, I think Brother Dude is gonna be going on a mission to save his girl. Despite all of her many red flags, like constantly supplying him drugs, and notice how she kind of switched up behaviors when it came to mentioning that Demerzel was a robot. Either way, we cut to Don trying as hard as he can to follow Gale's advice and hopefully surround Calgon with an Imperial fleet. But considering they have to get the Galactic Council's permission and the Empire's history with taking an entire Imperial fleet and surrounding a single planet, everyone's just a little bit hesitant to give Don access to this. And Don, despite being frustrated, does accept this fact, which clues us into this potentially being the best iteration of Cleons we've had in any season. That both in temperament, in smarts, and potentially in leadership qualities. Until one of them potentially starts spinning off of the rails, it sucks that the potential fall of the Empire is happening to the most capable emperors we've seen so far. Either way, this segues us into a very heartwarming scene between the genetic dynasty. Scenes like this are really rare, and I'm wondering if this could potentially spell the end for the Empire soon. But let's go ahead and cut to the spoiler section of the video, and again, I'll be referencing some potential book spoilers and where the series could be going in Season 3. Let's start with Beta and Torin's scene with the Mule. Beta bonding with Magnifico was very cool to see, even if most of it was off screen. I think keeping Magnifico seemingly off screen and as sort of a side character is one of the best ways to go about it. If they paid way too much attention to him and maybe gave us too much sympathy the moment we're introduced to him, it'd be easier to pinpoint the potential twist coming up in the reveal that Magnifico is the actual Mule. And with this reveal, it will explain why Torin and Beta were able to get off of the planet so easily. It's likely that after the interaction with Han Pritchard, the Mule started to make a plan so he could find out more about what's going on. Specifically, maybe find out more about Gale Dornick, utilizing his cover as the clown to get in close with Torin and Beta. But Beta calling him Maggie was totally fitting for the character, despite it not happening in the books, at least I believe. But this does raise one other question, with Han Pritchard and his interaction with the Mule. See, in the books, Han Pritchard is subject to becoming one of the Mule's top puppets. He's never confirmed to be a Mentalic or with the Second Foundation, as far as I'm aware. And that is a very central and key element in the books that he's a part of, that being Foundation and Empire and Second Foundation. See, by the end of the first book the Mule is in, Han Pritchard is subjected to becoming controlled by the Mule. And in the following book, Second Foundation, he is forced to go find out where the Second Foundation is, accompanied with somebody who isn't subject to control by the Mule. But him not knowing where his true allegiances lie and who's tampering with his mind was a very key aspect of the novel. And it's not that another Mentalic can't control other Mentalics, as we saw with Season 2, Tellum was apparently able to do so with an entire planet or group of refugees, and even she was afraid of the Mule. But with Han Pritchard's potential knowledge of the Second Foundation, it leaves you to wonder what could happen with his character. My money's on the fact that he and Ebling Miz will potentially switch roles for the next 2 seasons. As in, he'll get Ebling Miz's fate by the end of this season, and Ebling Miz will take on his role in Season 4. And again, huge spoiler warning for what goes down with Ebling Miz in the books, but essentially, Ebling Miz is forced to find out where the Second Foundation is actually hiding, and just before he can reveal the potential information that he found out to the Mule, he ends up getting killed. And if that theory seems a little far-fetched, let's remember that these 2 characters have already had some of their moments switched. See, when Han Pritchard is getting after Mayor Imber for not taking the Mule seriously, you could easily see this as a book reader as a substitute for Miz's interaction with Imber, as both characters end up giving Imber a hard time in both versions of the story. So seeing as they already switched once, is it possible that their fates will also be switched? Another thing I find interesting is how exactly the Mule's powers work. In the books, the Mule mainly tampers and messes with people's emotions. So while he can't necessarily read their thoughts, he can actually manipulate what they really believe and feel. Anything from the terms of full loyalty and love, to the feeling of utter despair that could actually kill you. Part of me thinks during his scene with Torin Mallow, he was actually utilizing this tactic, but at the same time he was cutting Torin Mallow's hand. So I think in the series it's safe to assume that the Mule just has a really powerful Mentalic who has the same abilities we saw Tellum display, with maybe a few quirks here and there. But notice the big indicator later with the Mule where he references,
Do you ever feel like your life is not your own? Like it's been overtaken by some Holy Spirit?
This to me is solid confirmation that we're gonna get a twist later in the series where the Mule will be revealed to be Magnifico. But I have a few theories on the Mule that I'll be releasing in a separate video coming out here soon. Either way, let's cut back to the Imperial storyline and talk about Mycogen. It seems the Mycogen group are taking a big deviation from the books, but they could potentially still follow the same suit. Essentially in the books, when humanity expanded and spacers existed, the spacer homeworld, or one of them, was Aurora. On this homeworld, both humans and robots lived together, with robots having a little bit less rights. And during the fall of the spacers, some of their descendants ended up emigrating to Trantor. In the prequel books, Harry Seldon even ends up finding some robotic remnants. And this group seems to lament the days with robots on Aurora. But some key differences is how the group is actually presented here. In the books, those in the Mycogen sector didn't really give women the same rights after Aurora. They seemed to be treated just like robots. They also weren't a big fan of hair, which is why when Seldon introduced himself by first name, they ended up punishing him because he wasn't like and subscribed to MudLuvMedia. Either way, it seems that within the series, we're getting a different and necessary alteration to the actual Mycogen story. That's unless everyone ends up being bald when we get there. This, I believe, will be one of Brother Dude's final episodes in the Imperial Palace before he goes off to try to find Song in the Mycogen sector. And there is strong potential that on his way to escape, or maybe deciding that he doesn't want to escape, he ends up killing Maven, or the Imperial Guard we've seen him befriend. No matter what, I actually thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I feel like it kept the plot moving and started setting up pieces where they needed to be. I enjoy the agency that Gale's getting and her being able to demonstrate some of her more politically savvy side. I really enjoy what they're doing with Dawn because I can't tell if he'll end up becoming a tyrannical emperor or if he's gonna be the most reasonable and likely person to rule that I could see. It would really be unfortunate to have the most competent leader never getting the chance to lead. Judging by some of the trailer shots, I'm thinking next episode we'll follow the Mallows to Haven and maybe see what happened with Randu Mallow despite what happened with Han Pritchard in the first episode. My guess with Han Pritchard is that he'll go to meet up with Gale Dornick and maybe inform her on some of what's happened. We'll also maybe get some flashbacks on how they met. It also seems that with the Mule taking the jump gate and having almost a direct line of access to Empire, this one shot we see of the Galactic Council coming under an explosion of some kind could really be anyone's doing. And I do also wonder if potentially the fate of Ember isn't going to be a good one. I'm thinking once the Mule gets a hold of him, he might not even have to take control of Ember's mind. Ember might just surrender out of fear. But I do think at some point, the Mule will take care of Ember permanently. But we'll have to wait and see where the story goes. Either way, if it feels like I missed anything, feel free to let me know down in the comments. I have not read the prequel books in the Foundation series yet, and I'm still making my way through. So if I got any information wrong, I'm definitely down to be corrected. Still, I think incorporating the prequel storyline within the actual primary storyline is a pretty smart one, especially combining it with the Imperial storyline that was completely made up for the show. Either way, thank you all for watching, appreciate the feedback, appreciate the support, and remember, Ember's gonna be really mad when he eventually gets his whisper ship back. Have a good one, y'all.